This is a very simple review of close reading. I'm sure you've done this before, so we'll just go quickly through the procedure for annotating a text in close reading. The first thing you want to do is number the paragraphs. You're going to need to be able to cite and refer to the text, so a simple way to do this is numbering each paragraph in the left-hand margin. When you refer to the text, make sure you state which paragraph number you're referring to, and everyone else will be able to find it. The next thing you want to do is chunk the text. When you're faced with a full page, sometimes it's overwhelming, so breaking it up into smaller sections or chunks makes it easier to do. You're going to draw a horizontal line between paragraphs to divide the page into smaller sections. You want to look to see where the paragraphs naturally break. Maybe the first 3 paragraphs have the hook and the thesis in them, while later on the paragraphs are where the author addresses an opposition. It's important to understand there's no right or wrong way to do this as long as you have a reason and you can tell us what that is of why you group the paragraphs together. The next thing you want to do is underline and circle with a purpose. You want to underline and circle very specific things. For example, when you're studying an argument, underline the claims. And claims, of course, are belief statements that the author is making. You want to circle very specific items as well. You should circle key terms in the text. Those are any words that have a definition with them or they're definitely repeated throughout the text. Next, in the left margin, you should mark down what the author is saying, and that's easy because you're going to summarize or write a little 10-word or less summary of what each chunk says in the left-hand margin. And finally, in the right margin, you want to describe what the author is doing. And for that, you're going to use power verbs, and I'll show you a list of those in just a minute. It isn't enough just to write the verb comparing, for example. You have to tell what the author is comparing. Here are some examples of power verbs. So maybe perhaps the author acknowledges a certain point or characterizes someone a certain way or points something out or questions. Maybe there's a contrast or a reflection or a debate. Maybe the author defends someone or supports something. Maybe there's an exaggeration or a symbol. There might also be a hint or an illustration. So these are the types of verbs called power verbs that you want to use in the right-hand margin to describe what the author of the text is doing in that part of the text. And you do that for each chunk. Now here's an example of what that looks like. So you read the article with a pencil in your hand. You're going to mark the text by numbering each paragraph like this. This little line right here by itself is paragraph 1. And here, this chunk right here, or this little piece, is paragraph 2. And there is paragraph 3. And so the person has continued down the page, numbering in the left-hand margin. Next, the student has chunked the text into smaller pieces because when we look at the whole page, we can see it's kind of long. This student has drawn horizontal lines to put the pieces of the text into smaller chunks. And those chunks are also going to be helpful when we come to the last part of this exercise. So now we've numbered each paragraph and chunked. We're going to circle any key terms. So this person has decided 99% is a key term because it has something to do with Occupy Wall Street, which was in the title. And million, million, and million is a repeated word, so that person circled that as well. When we get to further down, there's Occupy Wall Street, a word from the title, and workers, because we know that that is what this protest is about. Then we want to underline any claims. So here, this student has underlined LeBron James is as far as you can get from the 99%. That's a claim. That's a belief that the author thinks. And down below that, so James may seem to share nothing with the 99%. That's another belief of the author. Usually those can appear at the beginning of paragraphs like topic sentences as well. The last two parts. In this left-hand margin, what is the author saying? So we're going to take each chunk, and in this case, it's paragraphs 1, 2, and 3, and just summarize it in 10 words or less. Here, the student has said, LeBron has little in common with the 99%. That's the summary of this little section. We want to look at what the author's doing in the right-hand margin. And what is the author doing? Well, using this power verb contrasting, the author is contrasting LeBron James to the 99% by showing what he is and what he is not. And basically, you do that over and over for each chunk for the whole text. After you've numbered and chunked, you repeat steps 3 through 6 for each chunk, and you don't go on to the next chunk until you've done that one. Now, for our articles, there's one little tricky part that I need to point out, and that is we're going to be reading about the ban on photographing military coffins. And if you are reading article number 1, this is an author who is for keeping the ban, which means no photos. You're going to do the same things I just talked about. You're going to number each paragraph, chunk it at natural breaks in the text, circle any key terms that are defined or repeated, underline the claims or the beliefs of the author. In this left margin area, write what is the author saying by summarizing each chunk, and in the right margin, what is the author doing right there using power verbs? Tell what the author is doing for each chunk. Now, when we look at article number 2, article number 2 is against keeping the ban, which means yes, there will be photos, if that person is correct. You're going to do the same exact thing. Read the whole text with a pencil and number each paragraph. Chunk at natural breaks in the text. Circle any key terms that are repeated or defined. Underline the claims the author makes or his belief statements. In the left margin over here, summarize each chunk, telling what the author is saying. And in the right margin, using power verbs, tell what the author is doing in that part right there. And that is how you're going to do both of these articles with a close reading technique.